This is a special meeting of the City Council, the City of Prospect. Today is March 25th, 2022. The special meeting is for the purpose of having a second reading, ordinance amending the budget of the general fund for the current fiscal year, and also for the purpose of having a first reading of an ordinance amending the ordinance regarding compensation of city council members. So having said that, turning to the first order of business, I will ask if there's a motion regarding the amendment to the budget.
I move the approval of the budget amendment, second reading and approval.
Second.
Is it moved and seconded? Now we'll get back into discussion. Is there any discussion?
Well, Sarah nicely answered my question in regard to whether or not we've gotten a grant. And the answer is no, they haven't decided. They haven't decided yet. The time frame is close, but it's not here.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. Okay. My second question is, why are we already allocating it to something that we may get grant money from when there are other things that are also on the horizon that we haven't attached dollars to? Why are we not putting it into some kind of reserve fund so that we can allocate it based on priorities after we know what the dollars are?
If I may speak to that.
Certainly.
I think the reason that we're seeking to authorize the money for the park, notwithstanding the fact that there's a grant application outstanding, is that we may not get the grant. And we want to be prepared to move forward if we do not have it.
Okay, but then are we not going to fix City Hall?
Yes, that's in the proposal under FEMS, an increase of $35,000, which will address getting the front door of the old City Hall repaired, as well as fixing the leak in the roof. That's what's in that $35,000.
Okay, and what about the painting?
Actually, we haven't really had any consensus or discussion about whether or not we want to do the painting. We've just in the last couple of days gotten a estimate from one painting contractor, so we know what we may be looking at there. But that's early days as far as whether or not we paint City Hall. And if we do, that can easily go into the next budget that starts July 1.
So by taking this action today, we are saying that of the things on the horizon, our biggest priority is putting in a playground next door. Is that
Yep.
correct?
No.
No, not even close. The playground next door, as you put it, is already in the budget.
Okay,
That's
then
in-
what is
that's in-
this $400,000?
There aren't $400,000 more. So I'll just mention, so it adds 188,000 to the parks budget. And we did have the ARPA fund meeting, since that's what this is allocating. And that does seem to go in line. So we do have, 82K for the bridge. There is an estimate already for the pavilion and completing the park. There was a consensus in the ARPA meeting that creating accessible avenues, it wasn't addressed as ADA in the meeting, but certainly this park would be ADA accessible, but accessibility in general for our senior citizen population, but also I'm assuming people are also including younger kids in that too. That was for the parks in general, all of them. So there was a discussion of a boardwalk, which I think we did not vote on that or anything. So citizens don't think that that's a done deal, but it did seem that there was, if it could be accessible and if it was approved, that potentially there might be consensus among the council that would be something, but there's some legwork to even figure out if that's feasible. And I think that those fees would be in that. So there's some things we've already discussed, agreed on, and put in there that have
So what would
well,
we be
hold on just
doing?
one second. I don't mind, but I just want to finish. That would be included in this. And so the only way you can start moving on these projects, as we've seen when we developed the plan for Little Hunting Creek Park, that started back March of last year. So it takes a long time to do this. And I think to get the ground running on some of these things, like the bridge for the park, that Linda's spoken about, that could be done like now. Not now, because this has to be approved today, but tomorrow. I mean, she could have that
Okay,
started.
so tell me what this $188,000 buys.
So you, 82K for a bridge. You've got the extra addition for, because that 291 original amount is for all of parks maintenance. So there was 220 allocated for the park here. It's another 100. Can somebody help me with the added bit between the permitting fees plus the earthwork plus the change to a
The
pavilion?
total for Little Hidden Creek Park, according to Herb's estimate on March 8th, was $452,934.
So about 220 more. So some of that is already included, but I think that's where you're getting the rest of the money. Plus you're getting a jump start. I have no idea how much an engineering assessment would be upon. I'm assuming that the council might be up for the city starting that. As I'd assume that would be a couple $1,000s there, just to even see if a boardwalk's feasible. Those are my thoughts.
Does that answer your question, Sandra?
Well, yes and no. You come up and now the total amount going to Little Hunting Creek Park is approximately 400 and,
$52,934.
and of that, we've already allocated some of it. But I guess.
It was 220 in the budget.
220.
220 was approved already in the budget. Yeah, but that did not include any like permitting fees or any of that sort of earthwork type of stuff. That was prior to that.
Yeah, and in the additional, there's architectural fee for 26,000, electrical engineering, 7,200, geotechnical investigation, 5,950, pavilion costs, 169,836. Park site development and site electrical is 124,098, playgrounds 100,000, electrical at the pavilions 10,000.
So the bulk of this 188 is going to the pavilion. Is that accurate?
No, it's pavilion, it's 169,000 is the pavilion. It's the support of services to the pavilion and to the park in general, including the pathway and landscape.
Yeah, and then there's the drainage and the parking lot are also included in that. So, and that extra money, because that was not included in the 220. So the added parking lot that I think at least before every council member wanted that, and I don't know if that's changed, but
And that was not funded in Little Hunting Creek Park, nor was it funded in the paving. It was mentioned, but it was not necessarily. funded in
correct,
the
but it
paving.
was not in that 220. So I think the things that are the unseen things that I'm sure Mark Madison would speak highly about, the perks that we're getting in tandem with that cost is the new parking, which I think everybody does want, but also drainage out there. So there is that storm drain outlet that comes out from underneath 42. It pumps straight out sort of into this third of the park, and they're going to pipe that and go around the parking lot and out back into the creek. And so that will aid tremendously just in terms of water just free flowing out there, but also for parking lot usage.
We've talked about that a lot because that was
Yeah.
one reason why the additional parking was expensive.
Correct. So there's a lot of good things that are added in there that are not just a park amenities. So which I would consider the parking lot to be part of that, but just in terms of us chatting, it was about 128K, just under 130 was the earthwork, the permitting, the electrical, that piping, the parking lot, the connectivity in terms of connecting the parking lot, how do you get a sidewalk ramp down there? All that was included. So there's a little bit of that sort of, you don't really get to see it, but you get all the advantages, money, which was a lot.
Is any of this ever written down anywhere?
100%, yeah. We do have
We didn't get
meet,
that.
sorry, there are documents that Mark has that I think my assumption, I don't want to speak over that, is that probably before they went out to bid, that would be something you'd see, but the money is in the budget for it, at least in pieces. So I'm aware of that because I sit in on the meetings just trying to coordinate. And Herb Schulhafer, it runs that to oversee it. So I am happy to forward that. I, to be honest, didn't know that you hadn't seen it. So there's no problem with that. Yeah,
Herb put
absolutely.
out this sheet.
Okay, but we didn't get it. We're sitting here today trying to vote on a very large amount of money. and no background. Now, we've got part of it, you've shared a lot over time, no question. But I cannot vote for this based on the information I've been given so far. I think you've all done a fine job of explaining, but it sounds like I need to see what came in on the bid document.
None of this is going out for bid. It won't go out for bid until we have the money. Period.
Okay, but is that, Sarah just mentioned bid.
Uh, Leading up, so I've been to all the meetings since this past March, where they're developing all of the documents that go into the bid packet and all of the plans and, hey, what's needed, like Mark was the one who mentioned, hey, there's a lot of earthwork to move around, or you want to maintain certain elevations or raise up these areas. These are all things that can be done, but this is the sort of behind the walls work that has to be done. It's not pretty and no one appreciates it, but it's the stuff that has to get done. So that's why I might have chosen maybe bid wasn't the correct word for me to have chosen. I've been in all the meetings with the documents leading up to being able to create a bid pack and go out to bid.
I think that's lovely, but we weren't even invited to the meetings. It wasn't, that, getting that kind of background information has not been an option for us.
Of course, the first reading was, whenever the first reading was, we've all had the opportunity to ask questions and to explore this. So I think that's to some extent a duty we all have.
Well, Don, you obviously have some information on your iPhone. Is that information generally available? I mean, that's interesting. I'd certainly like to see that. And I think it falls to what Sarah just explained, most of it. But I mean,
Yeah.
is it available? Is it available to the public?
Early March.
Is it available to the public? Or is it just,
Since they've been working documents until probably, I think,
Been a working
2 weeks ago, I'm going to say no. I don't want to step on anybody if that's not the case. I think mainly most people like Doug has gotten them because it's come up at like Parks meetings and he's been at some of the meetings, but it's through an inquiry, mainly because those were being developed as a, well, how much does all of this cost? And trying to figure out, does it exceed that 220? And once you had parking and all that, then of course it did. So that's where we work. But I hear exactly what you're saying. I think that's how other people have gotten it, as they have inquired about it. And we've talked about it like the parks meetings and stuff like that. Not to that detail, but just, hey, what's an update? And those you guys are obviously always invited to. That's not me saying that was your responsibility to have asked, but
They
you know,
archived, a lot of us have
Yeah.
looked at those.
so, yeah. Yes.
so in response to people, when I leave this meeting, people just say, well, what happened at the meeting? Well, we changed the budget and we approved $103,000 for the police requirement for upgrades and a lot of items, and put 400,000 into the parks. What's that consist of? And right now, other than the generic playground and expanding walking or something like that, a breakdown would be very useful in explaining what.
I don't think the
Occurs.
playground's part of this. I think the playground's already in the existing budget. This is an amended budget.
Yeah, we're only adding 188K. I mean, it's kind of semantics.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to argue.
But, you know.
Whatever that is, that 400,000 or 300
It's 188.
or the 188,
Yeah.
or whatever that is, I think requires some detail. And I think we should all have it.
I think we've all had access to it.
I didn't say we should have access to it. I said we should have it.
And
No,
I'm
no,
not
what
arguing with you. I'm just saying we've had access.
What I will say is,
How
it's the
would we
same
have had
amount.
the access?
Yeah. What I will say, it's just, it is the same. So like the info about the capital outlay for the, not capital, the FEMS for the roof and the door, I haven't seen any of those quotes. They could be ripped out of somebody's back pocket, which they're not. I have I have I've been in government for a long time and I don't have quite as high of a distrust as others. And that's not to say you all, I'm just saying in general, someone tells me this is what the bid is. I go, hey, that sounds reasonable. I think that's a reasonable expectation of what that would be. Same with the police. To be honest, I didn't knock on your door, chief, to say, prove it to me. One, because I we'll assume that you aren't going to try to swindle the city. And if you did, then we would take legal action against you. But I don't think that that's happening. So I'm trusting in 103,400 and 35,000. To be honest, that's $138,400 that we all went, I think that sounds good. And 188,000, now we're saying, I can't do it. So it may be a difference between, there's just not a lot of, the support level is different, which I can completely understand, but
Going back to
how
Where it started, the police submitted a document that we got
he submitted
with
it.
all of the information.
Yeah, very detailed.
But-
Excellent.
But I didn't call that location to figure out is that accurate, nor did I call Jefferson County to go, is this really legitimate? I think it is. I'm just saying, I think there's a difference between what you support and kind of getting mad about numbers and then, so anyways, that's my take. I think we've all had a chance
I
to
don't
say
think,
something.
Sarah, I don't think there's any intimation that, we're looking at anything other than knowing what it is. I mean, it's not casting aspersions on anybody. It just, where's the list? What does that consist of?
I think they're good questions. I think we've had a good discussion. This is the second reading. And I suggest that we move forward with the vote unless there's something new to be brought up.
All right, without objection, we'll take a vote. Sandra,
No,
Don,
Yes.
Doug,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Frank,
No,
Greg.
Yes.
All right, that ordinance is now amended pursuant to a 4-2 vote. And we will move forward with the next item on the agenda, which is the proposed ordinance brought up by Greg Hulsman. First reading. Greg, I'll ask you to do the first reading since you wrote it regarding the compensation for council members of the city of Prospect. You want to read it, Greg?
Yes, thank you, John. So I'm asking council for approval of first reading. This is ordinance 615-2022, an ordinance amending Title III of the Prospect, Kentucky Code of Ordinances regarding compensation for council members of the city of Prospect.
Okay, thank you. I think that constitutes first reading. And having had that, I think we've completed our agenda for today.
John, I'll just mention, I think that would constitute a first reading, but I've been reminded that our custom is to vote on a first reading. I'll second the first reading. And
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we have a first reading. Sandra?
all I'm saying is that it is a first reading. Is that what? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
yes,
Sarah?
Yes.
Frank?
yes.
Greg?
Yes.
Okay, unanimously, now we can have a first reading. Greg, read it again.
Okay, thank you. The first reading of ordinance 615-2022, an ordinance amending Title III of the Prospect, Kentucky Code of Ordinances regarding compensation for council members of the city of Prospect.
Thank you. So that concludes the business of this special meeting, and we would entertain a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Second?
Moved and seconded, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it, and the meeting is adjourned.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
See you. Thank you.